You know, they say you can never go home again. Like, you can never truly go home again. And when it comes to movies or entertainment, especially in the reboot, requel, sequel era, it's very hard and very difficult to recapture that magic. And in the case of Netflix's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, oh, they tried. And in some ways, I would argue they succeeded, but in many ways, they failed to make it anything truly worthwhile outside of just a fun 81-minute, hey, let's kill anything that moves slasher flick. And even though a lot of people have very strong emotions for this movie, and I mean that literally, there's a 31% on Rotten Tomatoes for not only the critical score, but also the audience score, it goes to show you that a lot of people out there weren't really a big fan of this. However, in the subsequent few days since its release, it has remained in the top 10 on Netflix, even right now, as of February 26, 2022, a week after its release. It is still number 2 on the website, on the streaming service. So let's be fair, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre maybe isn't as bad as people out there trying to claim it. We're going to be talking about all of that and more here today on this week's episode of Podio Commentary. Let's freaking go. Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Matt Jarbo. Welcome back to another episode of Podio Commentary. On this program, we talk about, well, I should say I talk about movies, new, old, in between, movies I'm just watching, giving you guys my thoughts on them, as well as talking about the production history, things about the movie trivia-wise that I find to be interesting, and trying to provide a relatively more positive approach to the movie discussion format. Because, hey, listen, guys, so many people these days are able to take this particular genre and just do nothing but dump on it. If you don't know who I am, I've spent years working in movie theaters. I spent a few years working in LA. I have written and directed a short, a very minor feature film, a very small feature called In Search Of. And I've been a movie aficionado my entire life. And so for me, talking about movies is a passion of mine, and that's a big part of why Podio Commentary exists. I'll be fair, this was not the first movie I chose to kind of test this new format with, right? I was actually working on a few other things. I wanted to watch The Fugitive. It was hard to find time to watch The Fugitive. And then I'm like, you know what? Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. I bought the 4K. Been watching that off and on a little bit. Again, finding the time to dive into that is a little bit tricky. But for some reason last night, I found myself with the 81 minutes to spare. So I watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre after everyone I knew told me this movie was absolute utter garbage, absolutely terrible. Don't waste my time. I kind of looked at that as a challenge. If I'm being honest, if I'm being fair, I looked at this movie as if it was a challenge. Since everybody hated it, I got to find something in there that I like. That's kind of my personal challenge to myself. If I'm entertained, then it's not a wasted experience. And this movie did entertain me, even if in essence, it was still kind of a bit of a wasted experience, but it's one that I still recommend that you do. Because there's no such thing as a truly terrible movie-going experience. And let me just kind of preface it by this. If a movie is so bad that you walk away and you are angry at the movie, you should be able to find other people who are also angry at the movie, and then you can at least find some kind of mutual enjoyment. It's only when a movie is truly mediocre, that's when it's a problem. And thankfully, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 is not truly mediocre. And that's actually a good thing for this particular movie. But let's dive in. So for this movie, we have to kind of go back a little bit because there's a little bit of a rocky way to get it to the small screen. A little bit of a challenge to get it made, if you will. So all the way back in 2017, Lionsgate put out this movie called Leatherface. It was a prequel about Leatherface. It did okay. And Lionsgate had the rights to the film franchise, and they wanted to film 5 more movies. Well, why? Because horror is exceptionally cheap to produce. Nostalgic horror is exceptionally easy to make money on. And they filmed Leatherface in Bulgaria, which has a very similar geographical representation to Texas, which is why they also filmed this movie in Bulgaria. So Bulgaria is going to, I guess, kind of be like the new go-to for filming these kind of horror movies. And so ultimately, after Leatherface came out, they were unable to get it all put together, so the rights lapsed. And then Legendary, of all people, swooped in and picked them up. This time around, they got Fede Álvarez, the guy behind Evil Dead, and a couple of other horror films, to come on in and produce the movie. They got Ian Henkel and Kim Henkel. Kim Henkel co-wrote the original film with Tobe Hooper, and they hired duo filmmakers Ryan and Andy Tohill to direct it. Now, those guys you'll never hear of, and it's entirely possible you won't really hear from again, as they had problems with this movie. This is one of those ones where they got the cast together, they got them out to Bulgaria, they started filming on the movie, and as they were sending the dailies back to Lionsgate, they realized that they didn't like it, that it wasn't meshing. It wasn't meshing at all. And so they actually decided to fire the two directors and replace them with someone else. On August 24th, 2020, it was reported in Deadline that Legendary had pulled the plug on the movie, putting it in hiatus for a week, while they removed the two directors and brought in a new director, a man by the name of David Blue Garcia, who, according to Deadline, is an Emmy-winning director and cinematographer whose feature debut was the $58,000 budgeted Tejano, which premiered at the Dallas International Film Festival before landing on HBO in early 2020. He also has shot multiple commercials for Verizon, Lenovo, Fisher-Price, T-Mobile, and Firestone. So this guy knew his way around a film set. He knew how to put out decent-looking stuff, and he probably knew how to shoot it quick and cheap. And him being also from Texas, and this particular story being from the heart of Texas, the horror heart, if you will, it makes a lot of sense for him to come on in and basically reshoot everything. They opted to just redo it. Nothing that the original director shot was even remotely included in this feature film, which really makes me question what exactly they filmed. It's kind of like with the whole Solo situation with Lucasfilm. 70% of the movie was reshot. You can see some of the stuff that Phil Lord and Chris Miller had put into Solo in the final cut. But this is one of those situations where apparently it was so bad or so just out of line with what Legendary wanted that they just brought in this new guy. And at least from my take on it, it does feel like David Blue Garcia went in there and he shot a very, very lean movie. 81 minutes, including end credits, is not something that even would make its way into theatrical releases. Generally, if I recall correctly, the minimum is 88 minutes long. So this isn't even what you would consider to be a full feature film by even like some of the like shortest animated movie metrics, but still it works for Netflix. And again, it's not that an additional like 8-9 minutes or whatever would have made this movie any better. In fact, I think they probably cut out a lot of it because there really isn't a lot in regards to like, let's say like the story, even though I do feel that in essence, what they were able to do with the script and what they were able to do with the movie was in line with ultimately what Tobe Hooper was commenting on back with the original film in 1974. So by looking at the Wikipedia for the original film, you got to understand the themes, right? It's not just a general, like, here is a faceless, like almost literal slasher killing all these random teenagers in some backwards Texas town. It actually was a commentary on society at the time. So according to Wikipedia, this is what they say. Hooper had cited changes to the cultural and political landscape as central influences on the film. His intentional misinformation that the film you are about to see is true was a response to being lied to by the government about things that were going on all over the world. This included Watergate, the 1973 oil crisis, and the massacres and atrocities in the Vietnam War. And also what he said was a lack of sentimentality and brutality of things. As we oftentimes see in wartime, a lot of nuance kind of goes out the window. There's not really a lot of subtlety. It's like, here's the violence, here's the mayhem, here's the crazy, and then we all have to kind of deal with it. And right now, given what's going on in Ukraine versus Russia this week, it kind of feels a bit of an interesting tie-in to talk about that, because this is what Tobe Hooper was trying to critique. This is the kind of stuff he was trying to comment on. And we're kind of seeing something similar right now, which is also what I feel ties into this movie. As odd as it is, as much as art is somewhat criticizing life, it's very interesting. But the other big thing of this too, the other big history side of this has everything to do with the fact that, Ed Gein, right? Ed Gein being the mutilator, potential cannibal, probably necrophile, that we've all known about. If you happen to be a serial killer aficionado, you know Ed Gein, right? He inspired Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, and the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That, of course, is where this is based on true events is oftentimes referred to. It's clearly a take on the character of Ed Gein and what he did. And that's some seriously crazy stuff. So let's talk about the plot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. So if the original was a commentary on the Vietnam War and the oil crisis and Watergate and an unstable political landscape, well, this movie actually touches upon quite a few of the similar themes. The reason why is what you have is a group of young, hipster 20-somethings who have purchased this ghost town, this literal ghost town in the middle of central Texas called Harlow. They bought it for on the cheap, and the whole idea there is that they want to turn it into the next Austin. They want to make it another blueberry and a, bowl of tomato soup, if you will. And they want to do it on their own terms. They want to leave the violence and the chaos of modern life behind and create their own little gentrified utopia. This is what brings the main characters to Harlow. And of course, you don't even really care much about these characters, right? I believe Melody is the moneymaker, the main girl with the curly hair who drags her sister Leila alongside. Leila being a teenager who survived a school shooting. That, of course, is an element that is added into this. That's part of her character, which is a very actually interesting thing. Because you figure okay, if a bunch of millennials are buying up this small town and they want to go and they want to put their food trucks out there and they want to bring their art galleries and they want to bring their exhibits and all this, their avocado toast, whatever. And then you've got the central theme of this young school shooting survivor who has survivor's guilt, who, misses her friends, is being drug out to the middle of nowhere to be protected by her older sister. There's some interesting themes there. There's some interesting elements there that do unfortunately not get touched upon in a way that I feel like they should. They don't get touched upon really at all. They're there in theme. And it's if you know the subtext, if you can understand the subtext, you can get that. Kind of looking at the original movie from the lens of this is a critique on Watergate and the Vietnam War and the 73 oil crisis, while throwing in a mix of Ed Gein. It once you kind of look at it from that perspective, it takes on a whole different meaning. Here, it's not as subtle. It's kind of on the nose, with the whole gentrification thing. And, but it works for the idea of getting a whole bunch of people to the middle of Texas to basically be fish in a barrel. That's basically what it is. And it works out okay for what they're trying to do. You have Dante, who is a chef and a social media influencer who's able to use his social media platform and his popularity to help get a loan to buy out this town. But when they get to the town, they're looking around, they see a Confederate flag. So obviously with the investors on the way, you can't have the Confederate flag out there. So they go off and they look for a way to pull it down, and they walk into an old orphanage. And this is where they meet Ginny, old infirm Ginny, who's been running the orphanage since the 1970s. There's only one person left, her boy, a large hulking beast who hangs out upstairs. And when they get into an argument over the deed to the property, she has a heart attack and she ultimately dies en route to the hospital. And this is where Leatherface starts to go on, his mission, if you will. I will fully admit, when they got to the bit with the police in the van, you knew everyone in that van was going to die. They're not, I said, this movie is not subtle in regards to what's going to happen next. You can basically just figure it out. You can watch this movie on absolute autopilot. But what I liked about it was the gore. It had a lot of gore. The first The first guy who dies, this caught me by surprise. The first cop who dies gets his arm, like his wrist broken, the bones exposed, like the full bones break, and then has the bones jammed into his neck where then he bleeds out. And in the process of this, the gun goes off and it shoots the other sheriff in the neck, causing him to crash the van into a field of sunflowers, which is obviously a reference back to the sunflower fields from the original film. Inside is just Dante's girlfriend. And really, like, she's got no purpose. Well, you know what? I take that back. Her purpose is really kind of like, it's actually, her purpose is to be the one who calls for help and says, Leatherface is out here. You know, Leatherface is here. The man is wearing the mask of his dead mother. He cuts off her face. He wears it. And this information getting out to the local gas station attendant who runs the, you know, kind of like the gift shop for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Cause like in the movie, the events of the 1974 film absolutely happened and they never saw Leatherface again, but there's been all this like popularity and like true crime love. And again, that would have been an entirely different angle they could have played with. They could have, again, there's like a social angle they could have played with, right? Look at how South Park made fun of IDTV with the informative murder porn episode and the Make Love Not Minecraft episode, right? They called it informative murder porn. That was a complete angle they could have played up here about, you know, having that be that fascination with the macabre and the true crime and serial killers be something that played in. But I understand why they didn't do it. They just kind of established this is the world, this is the rules, this is what's going on. Okay, fine, let's do that. But then, you know, like, then you've got Sally Hardesty, right? The lone survivor from the original film, who apparently now is a hardened ranger. And she has spent nearly 50 years hunting down the man, hunting down Leatherface, the one who cut up her friends and murdered them all. And no one has seen him since. So, like, you know, she gets the call. And what's interesting is there's a bit of juxtaposition there because we see her gutting a pig. When we first see her in the movie, she's literally gutting a pig. And what I liked about that was it was meant to, I think, showcase the juxtaposition between her and Leatherface. You know, not to say that like she's a cold, maybe because they were trying to imply that she is cold-blooded and she's a killer and she's ruthless and she will do whatever she needs to do in order to win, in order to fight, in order to stop this guy. Like, I'm wondering if that ended up being a thing, but it just didn't really go anywhere, really, because like, as you know, the mom dies and then Leatherface kills everyone else in the van, including the girlfriend, who like she had like her death was so lame. I didn't care for her death because she's literally just like trapped in like the front seat of the car. She's able to get the call out. So she's being smart. She's being quiet. She's being careful. She's faking being dead. She is definitely trying to like play up that thing. But then she tries to sneak across the dead cop. And that is when Leatherface comes around and grabs her and takes a pair of pliers roughly, or just scissors, and just like guts her in the stomach with it while holding her down. I mean, she's just like dead. You know, but what I liked about that though, was after she was dead, a single tear like rolled down her eye. I thought that was a nice touch. That was a cool touch, you know, because she didn't scream. She was like the whole time, but there was intensity in her eyes. And she did a pretty decent job on that one. You know, she was Ruth, right? So this is played by Nell Hudson, who is from the show Outlander. So she did a pretty good job for the tiny bit she was in there. Although at one point before everything went to shit, she's like talking about like, oh, I can put my art gallery over here. That line made me want to commit suicide because I really hate that stuff, right? It's like, yeah, I understand the food carts. I understand the food trucks. I understand like the weird art stuff. But it's like when you have a 20 something that is coming out there, she's like, I'm going to put my art gallery over here. And we don't see her doing any kind of artwork. It's just such a throwaway line and there's no character development. Why is that? Because this movie is only 81 minutes long and everyone is going to die. So they don't really need a great deal of character development. In fact, Lila and Melody kind of get it. Mostly Lila gets it. And that's like done at first, like, when she kind of wanders off and she ends up meeting Richter, who's like the hardcore Texan that's their handyman in the town, and the one that has the gun that's going to be the actual, one of the weapons that's going to maybe be used to save your life in the end. And, and they're talking a little bit about the school shooting stuff, and it gives you a bit more backstory on her and her fear. But we didn't really get a lot of character with that, like they could have done more. They could have, at that moment in time, like had her flashback and say like, it shows her on the ground playing dead, so she can play dead. All right. That's something that doesn't really come into play, but like they could have had her like where she could have stopped them or something, and she didn't because she was afraid. And as a result of that, it was one of those situations where she's got to live with that guilt. For example, I'll give you a prime example of this. So go back to Saving Private Ryan. Adam Goldberg, at the end of the movie in the final battle, there's the one sniper, and the one German soldier kills, I forget who it was who he killed, but he slowly stabs the one guy to death. And then as he's coming down the stairs, he passes by Adam Goldberg, who's just like freaking out, like just freezes up, and doesn't kill him. And then at the end, when they round up all the soldiers, Goldberg then, kills the guy, as I think as a way to kind of like get payback for his friend who died and he didn't do anything, So, I mean, there's always like guilt in these situations, and there's fear, and it's a human nature situation, and we get that. But they could have done something. They could have done anything. They could have done any little thing in order to really make us care about the character and like really kind of set her up as the hero, because all things considered, they kind of established Melody as the hero, but she's unlikable. She's just unlikable. So you kind of want her to die. And I know her relationship with her sister is kind of the impetus of everything. And that's what they're trying to really build up. And they might, like they played up a little bit towards the end to get to the climax stuff. But other than that, it's just kind of like, all right, again, no real character development. And we're kind of meant to imply certain things. And I just feel like there was a lost opportunity there to really kind of make us start to care about these characters, because they just start dying. They literally just start dying. And like, it doesn't stop. Now, I'm not complaining about that, because I enjoyed that. I enjoyed watching them all just get brutally murdered. But like, you have Dante, and he gets a butcher knife to the face, and like, you think he's dead, but he actually like gets up and he starts crawling back outside, and like half his jaw is like just sliced open, and he ends up succumbing to the wounds, which is unfortunate, and then from there, Lila and Melody, like, Richter tries to go and save the day, but he ends up just getting his entire head caved in by Leatherface, but early on he took the keys from, Dante and Melody and everybody, because it started to come out that maybe when they went to Ginny's house and they told Ginny like, hey, you got evicted, you don't live here no more. And she's like, no, I took care of everything. I paid for it all. And they kind of went in like a dick and caused her to have enough stress to have a heart attack. And then she died. When in reality, she had paid off the bank and she owned the deed to the orphanage. So that was like, whoopsie daisy. That was at least motivation. That was at least motivation on Leatherface's part. Like I've seen the original. I don't know if I've seen the Next Generation, which I love, with McConaughey and Renee Zellweger. But like, I don't remember if I've seen the other ones. I never saw the 2003 remake. I never saw Leatherface. So, I mean, like, if there is character motivation with Leatherface in these movies, which supposedly like are I guess are kind of canon to this. At least that's what Fede Álvarez says. He says like the sequels have canon. Like this is canon to the sequels. I'm like, all right, I don't know. So I don't know if there's ever really been a motivation for Leatherface. To be fair, as much as I enjoy the concept of what the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise is, I haven't spent a lot of time there. So, but at least here it's like, yeah, his mother kept him like secure. She kept him feeling safe for like 4 decades. She kept him from killing people. Like she was his guardian angel. She was maybe even like, I guess you could say our guardian angel. And she was implied to kind of be a little bit of a villain in the movie. They kind of framed her as like a crazy old coot that she's going to be controlling him. Because remember, in the original, the other people were involved in it. His brother and his uncle, I believe, they were involved in it. So we kind of thought now that, Ginny's going to be the same way. Turns out she wasn't. She was actually protecting people, because right before she dies, she tells him, be the good boy I know you can be, and don't go in my room because that's where the chainsaw is. So there's interesting elements there in regards to like some character stuff. They touch upon it. There's hints, there's threads. They just don't pull on them enough to make them really go anywhere. But I will say this. What I loved was the only way I can truly classify the scene is like the bus scene is what I'm talking about. What I really enjoyed about the bus scene was that to me, it felt just like the cornfield party from 2003's Freddy versus Jason, except it's completely isolated to this bus. All of these millennial kids are all bumping all of this, techno, whatever you want to call it, drinking their drinks, surrounded by UV light in this bus. And then here comes Leatherface, and he comes right in, and they all just pick up their phones and start recording. It's in the trailer. But what I loved about that was just the one guy goes, you do anything stupid and you're canceled, bro. And like, he just gets eviscerated. Everyone in there gets eviscerated. It was so comical for how bad it was that it like legitimately just made me chuckle during the whole scene. It was a cool scene. It was very, very, very violent. Like at one point he runs the chainsaw through one guy's abdomen. There's this girl in the corner and she's crying, and he pushes the guy into the girl. So the chainsaw creates a shish kebab of people. The one realtor or the one lady from the bank is she finally gets a window open because none of them could get a window open. And as she's trying to climb on out, he just cuts her in half, and just like, you just see her body fall in like intestines and shit. And then here's the thing with this, right? During this whole thing, Melody and Lila, they're on the bus and they end up being able to get through the crowd of people back to the bathroom and hide out in the bathroom, while everyone else is just getting slaughtered, completely slaughtered. And I mean, if it was me in that moment, I would have been like, shut the fuck up. Don't say a word. Shh, right? Wouldn't have said nothing because, Leatherface might have thought everybody was already dead. And then you hang out till the morning and then you run. But of course they have to make this dramatic. So they make noise and they try to climb up through the roof, and he hears them. And, here comes like the whole thing with her. Melody earlier, she got a wine opener, like a chainsaw corkscrew. I'm like, all right, that's going to be, when's that going to play into it? Oh, I saw the trailer. It's in the trailer. There's no subtlety here. There's nothing left of the imagination. It literally does everything it can to keep you from actually like getting deeper into this world, deeper into these characters. And I think it has everything to do with like probably bringing on the new director and bringing in, having it be a very fast, quick paced shoot. They were clearly trying to go for just like, they were checking the boxes at this point. So all your core cast is dead. All of your extras are dead. And it's now the final battle between Leatherface and Sally, because she shows up randomly, locks the girls in her truck, and then she goes to hunt down Leatherface. And this is where I was laughing, because she goes upstairs. She finds Leatherface in the room, his back to her, his head down. She's got a shotgun right there. She can pull the trigger. And this is what she wants. But you know what, though? And I kind of get this as a video game player. She wants to savor the moment. She wants to feel like she won the fight. You can easily use your skills and dispatch a boss, but it's kind of like, it's not like playing a game on easy. It's kind of like what she wants, I think, if I'm going to use current gaming terminology. Like, she wants like a Souls game situation. She wants to fight the boss and have it be a hard boss and have her barely survive, but she wants to know that she beat him. And in this case, she's just telling him like, you don't know who I am. You don't remember me. I'm the one that got away. And he's just looking at her like, I don't know who you are, lady. I'm sorry. It's been like 45 years. I mean, I've moved on. Also killed a lot more people. So I'm just, I'm not seeing you. And then she just like, again, it's like that scene from Saving Private Ryan where she's in the moment. She could kill the guy. She could pull the trigger, And because she freezes, and he's like, well, she's not a threat, like the Nazi soldier to Goldberg's character. Not a threat. So just walks away. And then at this point, the girls are trying to get out of there, and Leatherface is coming, and then here comes Sally, and she's like, now she's finally got her ball. She got her groove back, really, right? So she's out there, she's shooting at him. Fuck you. And then, oh my God. Like when they get into it and she tries to strike him with the shotgun and he just like hits it with the chainsaw and like flies out of her hand or flies away. And then he just impales her with the chainsaw and he lifts her up and it just, blood gushes everywhere. And then he just like Hadoukens her body a solid 15 feet into a conveniently placed, pile of trash bags. And then she's still alive to act as kind of a Deus Ex Machina type situation where she's able to fire off a couple rounds to wound him, to scare him off into a movie theater, where she then tells Lila, you got to be the one to stop him. If not, he'll continue hunting you. And I'm like, but no, he didn't hunt you though. You got away. He didn't continue to hunt you. He kind of forgot you existed because it's been like 45 years. So it's not like he was really worried about that at the time. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. I feel like there might have been like another draft that had this particular part there and it just kind of made its way through. But so then like Lila goes into this abandoned movie theater, which by the way, it had now rained. And so this whole place there's like a big like hole in the floor and, it had filled with all this water. Because it's, center of Texas and all. And then, she gets into it with Leatherface. And like he almost kills her. And then here comes Melody, and Melody like does this, like, it's a hero moment, right? It's a hero shot. And I think it's even in the trailer. Like she's like holding up the chainsaw, and then I'm like, all right, cool. They're going to fucking impale this guy. Hell yeah. And then she just does this like uppercut thing where she just like swings it up once and it like just clips Leatherface like in the chin or something. And then that sends him flying backwards into the water and he just like sinks. And they're like, oh, he's dead. Let's go home. And then they get into the they get into the Tesla knockoff and, start heading out. And then Leatherface, for one last appearance, breaks the window as the car's in autopilot, pulls out Melody, and then just like in one fell swoop, just cuts her head off with a chainsaw. Not gonna lie, that was actually really cool. The final death was great. But then also, again, it harkens back to the original, where in the original, Sally gets away. And as she gets away, there's Leatherface, with a chainsaw, doing his chainsaw dance. And then here he does it again, all while holding Melody's head in his hand while doing it. And then that's where it cuts to black, gives us the title card, Chainsaw Massacre. And then there's a post-credit scene where it's him returning home to the house from the original. Now, what I don't know, and maybe there's like some kind of information here. I want to know what the geography is from where that house originally was to where Harlow, Texas was. Like, I'd love there to be like a horror breakdown of what is happening in this region of the world. And who knows, maybe there's a video out there that talks about that. I just haven't read that yet. But like, I'm watching this movie and I'm kind of audibly laughing at some of the dumber movements, like when Sally gets the chainsaw in the gut, they kind of hype her up to be like this hardened ranger and, she's hunting for justice and you're like, yeah, she's going to get it. She's going to go all Linda Hamilton and Terminator Dark Fate on this shit. And then she doesn't. And then she just like gets got like right away. It's like, all right. And it's not even the same actress, actually. It's not the same actress at all because the original actress who was in the role, she had Marilyn Burns had passed away in 2014. So this was played by an Irish actress named Olwen Fouéré. I'm mispronouncing that, but I apologize. And then interestingly enough, John Larroquette, the Night Court John Larroquette is actually the film's narrator for like the documentary. And he actually provided the voiceover for the original film and its 2003 remake. So he's kind of been, I didn't know that John Larroquette was in this. Now I got to go back and listen to it again to try to hear John Larroquette's voice because I happen to be a John Larroquette fan. So, I mean, this movie is fun. It's dumb. It's fun. It's simple. It's fun. It's entertaining enough. You can watch it with your friends if you just like the gore. I feel like in regards to like deep storytelling, there's like, it just scratches the surface of what could be interesting character commentary about, school shootings, about its PTSD effect on the survivors, about how, gentrification is a real issue, how like, the social justice warriors on the left are, kind of an annoyance and stuff like that. There's a lot there that they could have done. There was a lot there that they could have like played up. There's one part like in the very beginning where Dante gets pulled over by like the sheriff and you're thinking like, oh, okay, this is going to be the racist sheriff. And they weren't racist. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm glad the trope was avoided, but it's just like, oh, okay. Like you were expecting the good old boys, like, whatever, but no, it wasn't like that at all. So in that particular instance, like times had changed, I guess. I'm not trying to like, label all police in Texas as racists or nothing, but in these kind of backwater areas, that's the general trope. And they did do a little bit here and there to try to mess with it a little bit. And I thought it worked out okay. So it's one that, at the end of it, I think is, I think it's fun. I think you could check it out if you want. Will there be a sequel? I don't know. I mean, like, it all depends on how much money Netflix paid for this. And it all depends on what the impact value is for this particular movie in regards to Netflix, because if Legendary has the rights to it and they clearly want to do more with the franchise, these movies they're cheap to make. I don't know the budget of this. I'm going to say under 30 million, considering they really shot it in one location in Bulgaria. And I mean, how expensive is that? There's no big name actor in this movie. Honestly, probably the actor with the most credits to their name is John Larroquette. So it's like, and even that, they probably paid him $25 just to give a voiceover real quick. So it wasn't much. But if the minutes watched and the impact value is there, Netflix will absolutely greenlight a sequel. And I think given the fact that they need to up their content put out to compete with Shudder, who is putting out horror movies at a very consistent pace, and they're pretty well received amongst the horror community, they need to spend more time really building up this particular franchise and make it meaningful and worthwhile. And if they are going to satirize the world that we live in, maybe spend a little bit more time on the script actually doing that, having it mean something, and also giving us characters to at least give one little iota of a shit about. I know we're supposed to care about Lila in the school shooting. I get that. But it's also been like, it was the name of the school was even, I think it was like Stony Brook or Stonebrook or something like that, which is very close to the Parkland shooting. And it's like, that's a little bit close. It's a little on the nose because that was a terrible day. And yeah, it was 5 years ago, still a terrible day. Or 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I forget now. But the point I'm trying to make here is they can do better. And I would hope that if they decide to do another one, that they actually find a way to tell the story that's compelling and interesting and also absolutely fucking terrifying, because this one just wasn't there. But again, you had 81 minutes to kill. Check it out. And if there's any other movies you want me to take a look at for Podio Commentary, this is something I really enjoyed, just sitting here talking with you guys about this. Let me know. You guys can find me on Twitter at mjarbo, Instagram at the real Matt Jarbo, same with TikTok. And this is going to be, anywhere you find podcasts, Podio Commentary. So be sure to give that a listen. Also, youtube.com/Podio Commentary. Thank you all very much. Have yourself a fantastic day wherever you hear this. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.